Hello, and a very good day to those tuning into this interview. My name is Shiv Pocha. I'm the founder and principal analyst at Mandala Insights. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Rao Yallapragada, Director of Advanced Technology at Intel Corporation, on the topic of the case for 5G in India. Rao, it's great to have you with us. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Shiv. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for joining us. Maybe let's kick things off quickly with you. Why don't you give us an introduction about yourself and your role at Intel?
Sure. I am Rao Yallapragada from Intel Corporation. I'm involved with the development of advanced technologies in the field of wireless computing and computing technologies. Currently, I'm focused in the area of smart cities using 5G and other relevant new innovations. This is exactly what I'm doing at Intel.
Great. And as a follow-up, talk to us a little broadly about Intel. Obviously, the company is involved heavily in 5G. A lot of initiatives across the company, and they're trying to drive adoption. Tell us about the Intel vision for 5G and how it is trying to drive adoption.
Shiv, Intel is known to be a giant in the field of computing technologies. You know its work in semiconductor chip design and manufacturing, and especially when it comes to its delivery on Moore's law, x86 Pentium chip processors. But it's also well known for its work in network platforms, cloud, and data centers. However, in the recent few years, it has made significant strides in 3G technologies, 4G technologies, and it has done some real good work in standards on 5G technologies as well. Now, when it comes to 5G vision, it's a little broader than the rest of the ecosystem and rest of our partners. Intel sees the advent of 5G as an inflection point where you have this intersection of advancements in both computing technologies and communication technologies. Now here, 5G seems to have offering a lot of promise. And Intel sees itself to kind of provide the key building blocks end to end, starting from the devices, the radio network, and coming on to the core network, and you have all the various pieces in the play. Intel seems to have everything that it can offer, and it wants to kind of deliver on the 5G promise. That's how it sees its role in 5G technologies.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and then get into the main topic for the day, which is the case of 5G in India. Perhaps we can start with a short discussion around the current landscape for the telecom sector here in India. So, as you know, the last 3 years have been very eventful in India, which is, even by Indian standards, a lot has happened, considering it's been a pretty active sector. But we've gone from 10 plus operators down to a 3+1 scenario. So we now have 3 large private and 1 large state-owned telco as well. So what are your sort of thoughts and opinions on this pretty dramatic sort of change over the last 3 years?
So India, has seen a tremendous growth in the field of telecom sector in the last 25 years. Shiv. Okay, so what you're seeing, something as so dramatic as what you have described, is understandable in some respect. Okay, so 10 plus operators, and numerous players in the field now, now down to 3 players in the private sector, and then 1 government BSNL. So in one way, we can kind of see that this is consolidation, sign of maturity, where this area of telecom sector is now being played by serious players like whoever we have right now. So from that point of view, given the Indian political landscape and the business landscape that you have, it sort of seems like a natural kind of evolution at this point of time. But at the same time, there's a lot to examine here for the Indian regulatory agencies, the Indian government, as to what needs to be done in terms of providing those protections and safeguard. Growth is not always easy. Growth always carries itself with some responsibility in terms of providing some of these protections. So that's what it has to examine, I would think, in another way.
Sure. And in terms of these operators, what are your thoughts on their relative positioning? Not just from a competitive or sort of business point of view, but also from their network readiness point of view.
So evidently, Geo is well stationed, well positioned to deliver the 4G services. From what we see, based on the network deployments they currently have, the infrastructure they have put in place, while leveraging the very impressive, the fiber optic backbone they have installed across the nation. That's unquestionably, Geo is very good. In terms of its positioning. Now, when it comes to the two other major players, you have Vodafone Idea and then Bharti Airtel. We think that they are also very good in terms of their relative strengths. And the question is, how do they kind of come in and play out their strategies and then their strengths that they have in this? Their years of reputation, their experience in this field, and the kind of infrastructure base that they have, the subscriber base, and the loyalties they enjoy. And we think as the dust settles down, and things shake out, these two players will emerge once again very strongly, and then kind of play themselves in kind of delivering the 4G services, what you have, and then take on newer challenges. That's what we think.
So we're still in April. There's quite a bit of 2019 left to go. So I want to ask you, what are the three or four, what are the main sort of challenges for the industry in 2019?
Unquestionably, the Indian industry is kind of going through, a very difficult time in terms of the financial environment right now. It has a very tumultuous time that Indian industry is kind of going through. The Indian telecom industry has to face off this financial situation. That's one, which means that the rest of the industry, the telecom industry, has to come in grips with the new realities that they are facing. The new landscape, the new players that they have to figure out, what their strengths are, what their strategies are, and appropriate position themselves. That's one important thing that needs to happen. It's not the same as what you have 3 years ago. It's quite different. So that's one. And you very well know, Shiv, that the Indian telecom key players are in huge debt, and they need to kind of find a way to kind of have some kind of a recovery, because they may have to kind of find new ways to kind of invest and then kind of take on these new challenges that they have in place. So that's number two. And according to me, there's another one here. So ironically, that Indian industry has seen a lot of telecom industry has seen a lot of growth. The latest reports are that it has now more than 120 crore subscription base in terms of people who are using the telecom services, and there has been a strong uptick in data consumption, which only points to that the demand has not subsided, is growing, and there is a need for further networks and investment in this whole sector. So while the Indian industry is facing this financial situation and the debt, and then you have the need for further growth and then investment, these are some key challenges that Indian industry has to kind of face off in the coming months and in the next year or so.
Okay, I think we've covered that's a pretty good overview of the telecom sector here today. Let's start talking about 5G. So 5G is here. We've already seen the hashtag, and quite a bit of news. Now it's officially here with the Verizon launch and all the operators in Korea launching as well. We're seeing a lot of trials, pretty advanced trials going on in several mature markets, and even some trials in emerging markets like the Philippines and Vietnam. There's been some discussion about this in India, but let's just sort of dive into that a little bit. Let me ask you
Sure.
a pretty straightforward question first. Do you think India needs 5G? And if the answer is yes, do you think it's more of a consumer play or more of an enterprise or industrial play for India? And then we can start talking about what the major benefits are of 5G.
Definitely, India needs 5G. And to answer your question, and it's 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 more than what you have said, Shiv. The consumer play and an enterprise play, I would think. So first off, 5G is more than what you have now. It's more about pervasive connectivity. It's kind of looking to kind of build this what you call a highly connected, deeply connected society. That's what you have it as 5G as its key, as its vision. Now, let me tell you something from my point of view. So we have seen 2G, 3G, and 4G technologies kind of providing this connectivity, human to human, and somewhat from human to machines. That's what we have seen, providing not only voice but data. But 5G is a little beyond that. 5G is coming up with this, game-changing innovation, Shiv, like, not only providing mobile broadband connectivity or broadband connectivity, at a much higher order than what 4G and 3G has done so far, but it is also, looking to provide these additional features like um, connecting with sub-millisecond latencies, low latency communications, and then it's also looking to provide, you know, connectivity at a much higher degree of reliability. See, wireless environment as it is a very dicey and uncertain kind of environment with, all the blockages that you can kind of find, whether it is, in urban areas or, you have your own challenges in rural areas. But it's looking to provide connectivity at a reliability of 10 to the power of -9. That is, providing a error rate of something like, one packet in 10 to the power of 9 packets delivered. Having this is something really, really phenomenal in terms of what it is aiming to do. But not only that, the air interface is such that it provides this flexibility to provide not only data rates from low data rates or low sizes of low blocks of data to very, very high data rates. At the same time, latencies in the order of some milliseconds all the way up to whatever you can have, like 20, 40 milliseconds, and then provide connectivity, which I did not talk to you so far. Is it's looking to provide connectivity to hundreds and thousands of devices in any given area, like a square kilometer. We're talking about million devices around this area. So that's something phenomenal in a way. But yes, but beyond that, so you have all this flexibility and all these features. It's looking to kind of provide applications in new vertical domains that which we have not seen so far. So like for example, the manufacturing industry, automotive sector on connectivity, in your roadways, energy generation, the smart grid applications, the remote healthcare applications, and then in situations like mass transportation. So you have all these various new vertical domains where it's looking to kind of provide the connectivity to provide the needed automation and then provide new applications. So 5G can certainly have a disruptive impact, because it can come up, bring this new building blocks, like providing this connectivity, the needed connectivity that you, and then on top of it, it has this features to provide edge connectivity, network slicing aspect, and then connecting all the way up to the cloud. So you have all these different aspects to 5G. So from that point of view, does India need 5G? Yes, it is kind of doing currently its work to deliver on 3G and 4G, but I don't see 5G as an as a succession to 3G 4G. It is 5G is looking to kind of provide a new opportunity in new vertical domains. That's what I think very strongly.
Yes, I'd have to agree with that description, and I think it does a lot of promise for a lot of industries that have just not been digital. I mean, for lack of a better word. And actually, it's interesting you sort of bring that the point of pervasive computing up, because to go digital, um, the Indian government in the last few years has been quite active. There's a lot of initiatives that they've announced, from smart cities to digital India to make in India as well, the larger sort of umbrella manufacturing policy. All of these have had mixed success. But in the context of what you were saying just now, I want to ask you, so do you believe that 5G is a nice to have technology to take these, to drive this digital vision, or is it a must have?
Great. So you're talking about India's vision. Yes, multiple things have been in place, and then India is working towards to kind of meet these goals. One of the key themes that India has raised in the recent past is the digital India vision, a central theme. And what it means is that they're looking to have a digitally empowered society, a well-connected nation, and obviously this is a must. The nation need to have it. And they have already done some good work on it. And in order to really fulfill this vision, so what you really need is advancements both in the field of computing as well as communications to enable this dream, fulfill this dream. So, unlike what you had in 3G and 4G technologies, which I've been trying to emphasize, that 5G brings this major focus in massive machine-to-machine connectivity, and to enable this Internet of Things, which have been in kind of talked about for last decade. But 5G is, for the first time, 5G is bringing in all the features necessary to kind of make this goal happen. When it comes to machine-to-machine or Internet of Things, there's several benefits. That kind of 5G can bring as far as India is concerned. Shiv. Okay, and so first of all, let's talk about the broadband connectivity. So and also this vision that you have, the digital India vision. 5G can do its part in terms of meet this demand for enormous uh, broadband connectivity. Whether you have this use cases like dongles, providing broadband connectivity using dongles, or fixed broadband connectivity for rural and urban scenarios. 5G can definitely kind of help to kind of supplement that goal. So you have that, and then you have this 5G in terms of providing connectivity, the gigabit connectivity for the local and then regional government bodies you have. So that's one thing. Now, when it comes to these other applications, like for example, industry, it can, with these new techniques that we are talking about, new features we are talking about, like low latency, it can kind of provide automation in industry, in terms of inspection, in terms of providing connecting into robots, and then provide automation in the areas of supply chain management. It can do these different things, and also it can provide massive connectivity in areas like your smart cities, or if necessary in rural areas, like for example applications in smart agriculture. And then you have situations where you need to provide remote healthcare, for example. Imagine those congested cities you have, and you need to provide emergency healthcare. 5G could be one key technology to kind of adopt and then kind of deliver on those kind of on those needs. So you have multiple things happening. So to answer your question, to enable a digital India, 5G can play a major role, a significant role in kind of getting you to the finish line.
Thanks, Emma. You've spoken very eloquently about not just what 5G is, but also the benefits it can have for a market like India and the types of applications, pretty diverse set of applications that, that 5G can enable. But for all of this great stuff to happen, there's a number of things that have to line up, right? Maybe why don't you spend a little time talking about what those things are, and maybe in what sequence they need to line up as well.
Sure. A number of things have to line up. You are absolutely right. So first of all, in order to deploy 5G, in order to bring 5G, you need spectrum. And the world bodies have looked into allocating spectrum or use spectrum centimeter wave and millimeter wave ranges. So the Indian government and Indian regulatory agency have to have a big task on their hand to allocate spectrum in the not only from sub 6 gigahertz frequency range all the way up to this centimeter wave ranges like 24, 28, 39, and beyond, 29 gigahertz range we are looking into. So it needs to kind of allocate the spectrum in these ranges. That's number one. That's by itself a major task. Other important things, like we talked about earlier in our conversation, India is really facing a very tumultuous and a very difficult financial situation. It needs to somehow come out of the situation, and players have to find their ways to kind of tackle this financial duress that it's undergoing. So that's definitely another important aspect, as I say. But the most other important thing to remember is that 5G is currently being deployed. It's kind of taking place in one or two deployments currently around the world, and multiple of them are kind of slated for the end of the year, in terms of deployments, and more deployments will take place. A lot more will take place around the world in next year, 2020. And then when we talk about 5G, as I've gone through a set of use cases, we are looking into user devices. They're not just merely smartphones, smart devices. There will be devices that are necessary, for example, in a smart home or a smart city in terms of sensors, or in an industrial floor, you need different kind of, devices that are necessary for automation that's required for 5G to be deployed. And more importantly, India would like to kind of, given its situation, probably wait and see how all these 5G features are really ironed out, okay, before it deploys. So I think these are all the things that needs to be lined up, I would think.
Yeah, but definitely, your comments about devices very well taken. I think particularly in India, you not only need to be widely available, but definitely affordability is a big factor over here.
Yep.
So it might take some time, but the good news is that on the device side, at least, we're much further along, if you notice, in year one with 5G than we were with any previous generation.
Oh, great.
So, I am hopeful that the device ecosystem is going to move much faster this time around.
Great.
But coming back,
I would hope so too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Given all this multiple cycles that we have seen, so India should be well positioned at this point of time to take on a new cycle.
And then coming back to the spectrum question, there has been some discussion about spectrum in India already. So there have been governmental meetings. They've actually issued some guidelines for 5G. So why don't you talk us through sort of what bands specifically the Indian government has identified and how these compare to other sort of global activities?
Great. So in keeping line with the global 5G development, Indian government is looking into multiple spectrum ranges, in the most appropriate fashion, I should say. So the regimes of spectrum that India is looking into is sub 6 gigahertz in the range of like 3.4 to 3.6 gigahertz. That spectrum is being looked into India for 5G deployment and 5G activity. And then beyond that one, it's looking into 24 gigahertz, once again in line with the rest of the world, and 28 gigahertz is another spectrum area that it's kind of looking into. It's also looking into something at the range of 60 gigahertz, okay, to provide applications uh, for what we say, backhaul connectivity using, point-to-point connectivity, satellite connectivity probably, okay, to provide applications in that 60 gigahertz range. But there's also another area, another regime that it can look into is 39 gigahertz. Probably will happen in due course of time. But Indian government, Indian regulatory agency is looking into allocating this spectrum share.
Okay, and you talked about millimeter wave a fair bit, but for the benefit of anyone listening who's not quite familiar with this, what's the biggest benefit of opening up these new spectrum bands, and that too, going up to as high as 60 gigahertz and more? Obviously, you get large channel sizes compared to the kind of frequency bands we use today, but there's also that trade-off, right, with range and how much distance you can go. So, is this doable? I mean, why open up these high bands?
Good question. Okay, I should say, but let's kind of start this in a different way. The most favorable spectrum for wireless communication, as we have understood so far, is this, frequency ranges from, sub gigahertz, 1 gigahertz to, something like 3 gigahertz. Now, as one would have it, as the countries have it, and globally speaking, these frequency ranges, as you know, are highly populated right now. There's not much spectrum available, okay, for new applications. Okay, so you have 3G and 4G technologies, and whatever you have is very less amount of spectrum, so to speak, too. So what you really have, as you already mentioned, is in this higher frequency ranges, you have lots of spectrum available, okay, and at much higher bandwidth sizes, big swaths of spectrum. That's what you have. But one of the important question is, that you pointed out, is the kind of range that you will kind of have, right? The range is going to be much smaller. This is a basic law of physics. The energy dissipates much faster to much higher frequency. Yes, the ranges are going to be smaller, but you have a lot of spectrum, lot of band available to kind of provide the data rates that you need. But how are we going to do this? So there have been a lot of new innovations that have been kind of being worked out over the course of last 10 years and 15 years. These new antenna technologies like MIMO that we have seen, 4x4 MIMO, 8x8 MIMO. We are looking into even massive MIMO, looking into 128 by 128. Those kind of MIMO sizes. And there's been innovations in array, your RFIC circuitry. So you have that going on. You have beamforming technologies. What these technologies, which have been developed, Intel has been very keenly involved in this development. So we can kind of provide a very robust connectivity using these new technologies in these high frequency ranges, and provide very, very high capacities. But the sizes are going to be smaller. Therefore, you're looking into small cell deployments of and then it's going to be many more small cells. Therefore, you're looking into a small cell densification. That's what we call it. To provide connectivity. Okay, that's a new mode of operations. You can call it. That's what you would probably have for 5G deployments.
It's interesting you mentioned small cells, because that's such a common feature in India, because all the towers are very close together, and it's, I guess, a function also of just how dense Indian cities and urban areas are. So maybe this is not going to be such an issue.
I would imagine. Yeah.
All right, but then one other thing. I mean, are there any India-specific sort of scenarios that are in consideration by?
Yeah, I could kind of think of, or or kind of imagine one other scenario that I think Indian government and has mooted this idea of low mobility, large cell kind of a situation that they want to kind of customize it for Indian urban area, Indian rural areas. I think 5G can kind of provide ample scope to kind of enable those kind of scenarios. And probably Indian government and Indian technology players come up with few other scenarios. We are looking into large areas of spectrum, all the way from sub-6 to 60 gigahertz, as we have heard, and lots of spectrum and lot of frequency ranges. And with antenna technologies, I think they can kind of conceive few other scenarios if they need. But what I can think of is this whole low mobility and then large cell scenario is custom made for 5G, definitely.
Okay, and then so one final question for you, and I can't let you go without asking you this. When do you think 5G will be launched in India commercially?
Given everything that's currently happening, and I mean, to answer you, I would think it probably will take a couple of years for India to kind of um, when we really see the first 5G deployments in India. So we need this spectrum allocation, as that may take some time, and then like I said, the first deployments of 5G are just taking place, and with everything given, and I think probably India will see a great opportunity in having 5G for different verticals we talked about, and sure, it should be ready in the next couple of years to have the first 5G technologies.
Okay, so early 2021 is what I think you're saying. So
right.
we can hold you to that. All right, that brings us to the end of this interview. Rao, thank you so much for your time. And for those watching, I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Shiv, for having me here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to discuss 5G, its benefits, how it can be great for India. Thank you again.
Thank you, Rao. Take care.